got up early to get out on the bike this morning because it's supposed to be between 38 and 42 degrees today. I don't think I've ever been in 42 degree heat, so I thought it probably safer to come out early. I'm going to ride out to a place called Vivant, which is a medieval village with a 11th century, early 12th century tower, a church, and a beautiful bridge. I'm going to ride from there to the biggest forest in the Vendée, called the Mervent Forest, and just have a little potter around, if I'm honest. So yeah, enjoy the sights. So, some thoughts on riding my bike in France, which I've never done before. I know this area very well, Mervent. So, my dad and stepmom have lived over here full time for 10 years. They've had a property here for many, many years that they've spent a long time doing up, a farmhouse, in a place called Saint-Maury-de-Nuit, which is between Le Châtaignerie and Fontenay-le-Comte, where the first stage of the 2018 Tour de France finished. They've spent a lot of time and effort incorporating themselves into the local culture, not the expat culture. They speak, well, they don't think it's fluent, but I do. They speak fantastic French. They understand the culture. They go to a lot of clubs and groups that are French, not expat. And I have a huge amount of respect for that. So whilst I know this area very well, having spent many hours driving around here, I've never ridden my bike around here. And the first thing that strikes me is how bloody hilly it is. I hadn't really taken that into account. When you're driving, you don't. So, you know, most of the sort of 40k bike rides, 50k bike rides I've been doing, they've kind of clocked in around between 500 and 600-700 meters of climbing. Not particularly going out of my way to seek out climbs, so that's one good thing, because I don't really do an awful lot of elevation when I'm riding, and I kind of have to here. So what else has struck me about riding over in France? It's so quiet. I haven't picked a quiet moment to talk to camera. This is just how it is all the time. Doesn't matter if it's Thursday afternoon or Sunday morning, this is what it's like. Super quiet. I mean, the population to land mass ratio here in France is pretty bonkers, but obviously out here in the Vendée, where it's pretty rural, I mean, there's a car. That's a highly unusual thing to experience. They're very respectful. Did you see how wide a berth that guy gave me? That's pretty much how they all overtake, seemingly over here. Sure, they drive kind of crazy on the auto rigs sometimes, but on the roads like this, as a bike rider, I feel extraordinarily safe. That doesn't mean I take extra risks, of course, but it does mean that it gives you an extremely idyllic riding situation. So all in all, I'm going to leave this bike. This is the bike that I built up to bring over, and I'm going to leave this bike here to give me a chance to ride every time I come over, because I regret not doing this 10 years ago, really, because it's a joy. Awesome. Ready? So one other thing I haven't mentioned is the condition of the roads. The road surfaces are like this. It's just amazing. Other than the odd farm track here and there, it's pretty run down. All of the roads are just in immaculate condition. Ooh, a little bit of cobble's coming up actually. Interesting. Not exactly a Paris-Roubaix sector. And of course, the scenery, and well, it's just not England basically, and it's beautiful. What a place to live. I feel very lucky to get to come out here and visit. Anyway, I thought I'd take a little look at how to do training in a pool when you don't have the distance training. Perhaps in a hotel pool, or in my case, the pool that my dad and stepmom have got in their garden, and some thoughts really on what you can do with a bungee and a belt. So tethered or bungee swimming, let's start at the beginning. What is tethered or bungee swimming? Well, it's pretty simple. You have a belt, like a webbing belt like this at one end that you put around your waist, and then a length of webbing. This one's pretty long actually, but you can use any kind of length as long as it's kind of clear of your legs. And then this one's got somewhere at the other end, a clip that you can tie a knot in and clip that around something that isn't going to move. You need to make sure it doesn't move. Some sort of garden furniture won't do the job, but you're going to fix it to something that doesn't move. You put it around your waist, and it means that when you swim, you're being fixed in one place. You might have seen some pros on Instagram and even some amateurs buying some of those big Intex pools over the lockdown, or using backyard pools like Paula Finlay and Eric Lagerstrom do in this video. And you might have seen people on Instagram kind of showing that they're doing these kind of tethered or bungee swims, but you'll also notice that not everybody raves about doing it, because there are some benefits to it and there are some negatives for tethered swimming. So let's begin with the benefits of tethered swimming. Back when lockdown started in the UK around about March time, A, it was pretty cold in the water, B, public spaces were limited, you weren't supposed to be going outside unless absolutely necessary, which rendered us completely unable to do any swimming at all. So it does give you the benefit of doing some swimming and getting a feel for the water, which I think is massively underestimated. Just being in the water, feeling the water with your hands and kind of moving around in it is hugely beneficial to keeping that feel for the water. It also means that there are some things you can work on. There are some areas of swimming that can be worked on with tethered swimming. So things like your catch and your pull are quite useful to work on. And there are certain drills that kind of work pretty well with tethered swimming, but there are also some negatives that go alongside that. Some of the negatives are, of course, you're not actually moving through the water, which means anything that relates to kind of breathing, drills or otherwise, is a bit of a nightmare, because you're not creating that bow wave that you're breathing within. I use a snorkel for when I'm doing tethered swimming, purely for that reason. There's no massive reason to kind of work on rotation or breathing drills, purely because the water's not moving through. So I tend to focus on catch and pull drills with a snorkel, which is really useful for those areas of swimming. One of the other things you can use is also really hard sprint efforts. I usually chuck something onto the bottom of the pool, one of the kids' toys or something that sinks that you're supposed to dive down for, and I sprint and I try and hold my position there for as long as I can, and I might do kind of 10 or 15 of those, or I might count strokes. That's another thing that I tend to do. I tend to do maybe 10 50 stroke efforts or 10 25 stroke efforts, and they're really good for the kind of strength and speed work, but obviously you can't really do a 20-minute or a half an hour swim when you're kind of bungeed. It would numb your mind, but I don't really think there are any real true benefits. It's great for working on drills, certain drills, and it's great for working on the strength and speed work, but the endurance stuff isn't something that you can work on. One of the other things that I did whilst I had the pool to swim in is I worked on my tumble turns. Now, I'm not a tumble turn swimmer when I do masters. There's a couple of reasons for that, really. I can do tumble turns, but I find them slower than my touch turns. And I think there's a great deal of kudos and kind of inflated ego that goes along with doing tumble turns in the pool. And from my experience of doing it, I'm usually a lot faster touch turning on the pool than a lot of my peers are doing tumble turns, just because they're not actually very efficient at doing their tumble turns. If you're breathing within the last 5 meters from the flag to the wall, or you're breathing within the first 5 meters off of the wall, it's a completely inefficient thing to do. And that takes a great deal of fitness, and it also takes a great deal of technique. And I do find that most of the people that I know that do tumble turns that are in the kind of lower lanes, they tend to be a lot slower than if they were tumble turning. However, some of the guys in the faster lanes are considerably quicker over 100 meters, for example, purely because they tumble turn. And when they do touch turns, they're actually about the same speed as me, but when they do tumble turns, they might come in after 100 meters, maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds ahead of me. So I thought it might be quite a nice thing to kind of work on. So I did some tumble turn work, and I realised that one of the major problems that I was having, and I do spot this with other athletes as well, is that I tend to use my hands to try and aid the turn. So whilst I'm underwater, if you watch this sequence of video here, you'll see that my hands are near my body and I'm using them to generate the turn, which isn't what we're ideally trying to do. So my friend Hannah, who's a fabulous swimmer, you've seen her in some previous videos, told me about this great idea for training to do tumble turns using a couple of pool buoys that you hold in your hand. Now, I only had one of my pool buoys when we were in France, so I just used a couple of kids' water wings. And the idea of that is that as you swing your arms forwards and they go behind you, they stay there on the surface. You become acutely aware of them being there. So I did a load of practice with those, and I have improved my tumble turning, which I'm going to continue to work on when the pool's finally open. But it is a really good thing. If you want to develop your tumble turns, holding 2 pool buoys or a couple of kids' water wings in your hands when you do them will actually get your hand position where it should be. they should essentially stay here as you tumble turn. So as you throw your arms over, your body rotates and your hands are in that position, rather than them faffing and floundering around your body, which is what happens when I do them. Okay, so that wraps it up for part 2 of this week's videos. I hope you've enjoyed some more of the insights to do with my trip to France. We're obviously back now. I don't have a duplicate shed in France like mine. We're back now. We're off for a couple of days camping before Beck's next round of chemo, which is next Tuesday. She's made amazing improvements over the horrible kind of first week after the chemo, so we're taking as much advantage as we can in the gaps that we can. So we're going to go camping for a couple of days over towards the Quantox, and I'm going to take the bike and get a couple of days in of riding over there. And then next week's video, I'm going to be talking about a challenge that I'm going to set for next year, which I've been thinking about quite a lot over the last month or so, and laying out exactly what my challenge is going to be. I want to raise some money for a charity. I want to do something that's going to really push me, and I'm going to talk about what that is in next week's video. Hope you've enjoyed these videos that I've made in France, and I will see you on next week's video. Look after yourselves, enjoy what sunshine we have, because who knows how long it's going to last. See you next week.